we're in session 4, and in this session we'll be looking at Jukes' second chapter of her book, Media and Crime. You also have in this session 2 short films I'd like you to view. They're entitled, or they're sections of a film called The Myth of the Liberal Media. In that video, they propose, or they explain, Noam Chomsky's idea of the propaganda model of the media. And basically, those films present some of the institutional structures of the media that influence its production. And his argument really is that it doesn't matter what the political views of a particular journalist might be. The production, the business practices of making the news are far more influential on news content than on any individual's particular ideas or commentary. They present 4 filters, or they call them filters, that influence the content of the news that we see or that we read. I'm not going to go through these. I think the slide and the films are sufficient to give you an excellent overview of what these mean. But I have printed them out in the slide so that you'll know what to look for when you watch the film. And please let me know if you have any issues watching those films. They're again under the tab called Session 4. Basically, again, whether Chomsky's idea about media production is true or not, the idea is still true that media messages are created. Now, we've talked about this over and over again, and you'll hear me say it throughout the course of the class. That a news presentation is not reality, but it's a creative narrative. You probably saw that very well in the framing of the execution video that we watched last session, that there is a particular narrative that's being told, and it's very purposeful in its creation. When we talk about film, I like to make the point that we say we have 2 distinctions in film: documentaries and then regular film or fictitious films. But that almost leads us to believe that documentaries themselves aren't constructed or in some way scripted or narrated, and we know that that's just not true. Images, the way that films are put together, the way that news media events are strung together in a particular story, creates narratives that might tell us something about reality, but they're not exactly that lived experience. As your book states, the versions of reality are related in what Jukes calls 2 factors. One, again, is very similar to what Chomsky's ideas are: the process of news making, the structural determinants of news making, who's interviewed, who owns the process, what news stories are available in the particular week, who's the editor, how does that editing process occur, just basically the work process that goes behind the process of newsmaking. And then the assumptions that are made about the audience, and these assumptions can be made by both those editors, the newsmakers, the owners, and also advertisers. We know that if we follow Chomsky's model, that advertisers and those who purchase time during news events and now on dedicated news channels make assumptions about who's viewing, and in fact they're not really assumptions. They do pretty intricate studies of their markets on particular channels, and so those 2 groups, the newsmakers and the advertisers, can have a strong influence on what is presented or what news leads a particular day. Okay. Again, Jukes points out that news is shaped by everyday operating procedures of a news organization. There are production techniques and equipment. Simply, I mean, you can't really report everything. We can't take a truck to every news event. You can't pull out full-scale cameras. You can't do helicopter footage for every news event that occurs. So there are particular production techniques. There are equipment and limitations. There are shot limitations. Simply from camera angles and camera lenses that are going to frame a particular event. We can never see an event. I took a photography class when I was an undergraduate, and then I have more recently. And the photography teacher was very correct in pointing out that a photograph never really captures what we see. First of all, there's all sorts of limitations. The colors that can be reproduced in color photography are actually far more limited than what the eye can capture. So even a photograph that looks real is not really what we see, simply because the techniques and the equipment are limiting our exposure to that real event. The time of the event and the potential for coverage. We talked about this last discussion when we talked about the carnivalesque nature of crime. If an event occurs at a time where it's just basically difficult to cover, it's not going to lead that next story. It's not going to lead that next day. So the timing of the event and the potential for its coverage is really important. That's why a lot of times political events are scheduled and very tightly controlled, and those announcements go out very clearly so that they know that there will be coverage at a particular event. So the timing and whether coverage is available at a particular time limits the type of news that we might see. Again, the news tends to be dependent on institutions where news might occur. And there's an overemphasis in the news on the activities of those institutions. I'll just give you a quick example. Court dates are set well in advance. We know when Lindsay Lohan's going to court. We know when the Casey Anthony trial is going to begin. There might be some delays. There might be some small changes in schedule, but for the most part, those schedules are established by criminal justice institutions. So there's a predictability that comes with those, with coverage of those events. Again, the timing of the event and the potential for coverage is very clear because that institution controls that event. So there tends to be an overemphasis on the activities of those institutions. It's easier to have someone camp out at the court and cover a court case, or to be dedicated to the coverage of the White House, where you know press conferences are going to occur regularly, than it is to be on the beat, following a police car around and watching them sit idle for most of a day until a random crime occurs. So news tends to be dependent on institutions that create news or have scheduled newsworthy events during the day, rather than actually on those crimes which might occur in a deinstitutionalized place. Okay. There also tends to be an over-reliance on interviews with officials and official statements. Again, that's simply because of the predictability of those statements and the reliability that those statements will be produced. All right, she talks about two ways in which news-making organizations shape the news that we're presented with. The first is called agenda setting, and the second is called frame setting. Both of these concepts will be on the exam, so if you need to reread these concepts in the book, I think they're in the glossary of the book. If you need to email me for clarification or post in the virtual office, I'll do that. But they're pretty straightforward concepts. First of all, agenda setting is the process by which the totality of events and interests are funneled down into the news. Hundreds and thousands of events which might be newsworthy occur every day, but we only really hear about a handful of those. So and it makes sense. I mean, first of all, editors can't deal with every event that occurs every day. The audience doesn't want to hear. We don't have the patience to work through every newsworthy event that might occur in a given day. We might have interest in one global area one time, another global area at a different time. We might have completely U.S.-based news at another time. We don't pay attention to the totality of the events. And there's a organizational process by which those events become newsworthy. This is called agenda setting. So basically, agenda setting is underlying, or some of the research on agenda setting shows that the filters that are used to decide what's newsworthy or not end up shaping our ideas of what excuse me, of what has what the world is like. So because the media sets a particular agenda and tells us about specific kinds of news stories, our view of the world becomes shaped by that agenda setting process. We don't see the totality of events, but those events that are selected for us are the ones that we focus on, and those are the ones that we think about. So media concentration on few issues and subjects leads the public to perceive that those issues are more important than others. That basically we're led to believe that these are the things we need to be paying attention to in contrast to others. I like this quote from Bernard Cohen. The press may not be successful much of the time in telling people what to think, but it's stunningly successful in telling its readers what to think about. And I think that that's really powerful. And as I've mentioned, at least before in the face-to-face class, I don't really like stupid people theories. I think people do react and interact with the news that they read. But if we only have a limited availability of stories to work with, it does shape those stories that we interact with. It's stunningly successful in telling its readers what to think about. Now, I'll give you an example. Today I did a simple search of AP and Reuters news services, and I wanted to compare some of their lead stories. Now, first of all, there's some differences between AP and Reuters. If you were to look at their websites, you would notice that Reuters is more of a financial oriented website, at least they have become recently. So most of their lead stories have a financial spin to them, or they're about some aspect of financial institutions. Reuters also tended to be a bit more global in its coverage. But by and large, on the front page, we see very, very similar stories. The Gulf spill is blamed on poor management decisions. This is the BP Gulf spill in the Gulf of Mexico. AP lead story. Reuters, one of their lead stories is U.S. investigators release finding on BP oil spill. The assault on Afghanistan capital leaves 27 dead is the headline in AP. Similar story, 24 hours, 20-hour Kabul siege shows Taliban strength. Same story, different headline. Freed of Gaddafi, Libyans expect post-war boom. U.S. envoy hails Tripoli leaders, pledges support. Again, there were several stories on both sites about Libya and the rebellion that's gone on in Libya and the ousting of Gaddafi. One of the main differences was the bids to free the Americans that are being held in Iran. There are 2 men held in Iran. That AP news story was picked up yesterday front page by CNN. It has also been heavily reported on Huffington Post and is still currently on CNN's page today, September 13th. Now, that wasn't on Reuters. That was one difference. And Reuters, I think because of its economic emphasis, talked a lot more about the recession, number of poor hit record, 46 million in 2010. I also saw that story this morning on I believe both CNN and Huffington Post. So there's a lot of congruence between the headlines that we see across news media. So we're told what to think about in a way. It might be interesting to note that September 13th is the anniversary of the Attica Rebellion, which led to some substantial corrections reform and is very relevant to crime and the criminal justice system in the United States. Only one outlet reported that the Attica, that September 13th was the anniversary of the Attica Rebellion, and that was Democracy Now! I don't know if any of you read Democracy Now!, but there's no coverage of Attica on any of the primary news sites, either AP, Reuters, or any of those broadcast internet sites, Fox, CNN, Huffington Post, that pick up from AP or Reuters.